Hello, dear friends. My name is Lindsey Wise, and it's such an honor to get to come and be part of Birthing in New Earth. And I was deeply honored to be invited to offer the opening ceremony. And if you're a part of that, I was sharing the modality that I've been offering for about 20 years now, called Soul Song Revival. And I was invited to share about my birth stories and experience with ecstatic birth. And it has been such a gift because I've not only gotten to have one birth at home or two births, but three. I've had three home births, and each was very unique, a big journey, a massive initiation. And I've been asked over the years to share about these experiences. I've mostly just shared it in little snippets here and there. And so when Sam asked me to offer more of a story about this, I got a bit of butterflies in my stomach, which is not usual. And a part of that is because sharing about our birth experiences is something very real, very raw, especially the experiences that I've had. And I want to also share about the experience that I had after the first birth that brought me into a near-death experience and really shaped who I am and my dharma, who I'm here to be. And so, because I'm sharing these more personal stories, I'm going to invite you to just acknowledge and remember that your birth story, however it is, whether it's your own personal birth, being birthed into this world, in this incarnation, or if you are a parent, or if you've been a doula or a midwife, however it may be, it's very unique. And so I'm going to just offer some Palo Santo to call in the sweet spirits. And I'm going to offer some cedar as well, fresh, offering this for you and for me so that I can open up my heart to share these experiences. And in addition to sharing about these stories, I'm going to be guiding you on a bit of a meditation journey into going through whatever it is that's most prominent for you in your life at this time, that you are ready to birth or that you've been birthing for quite some time, that I could offer a bit of my love of spiritual midwifery to support that and what you're birthing. So, as always, when we're hearing stories and experiences, just to take it all with a grain of salt and to know the beauty that you're witnessing is within you, and also the challenges or the shadows that come up for you, that's inside as well. It's all part of the journey. I love to acknowledge the earth below and the sky above and the circle of protection of all of my guides and the support that has been with me through my entire journey for eons, but especially as a mother. And the support that I had from my earthly midwives, Yelena Kaloji and also Leanne Schwartz, and all of the other midwives and doulas and aunties and mamas along the way. So I feel it's important to share my grandmother, who is Ana Laura. She had 17 children, if you can imagine, probably not, but her and my grandfather had 17 children. And my mother was their sixth daughter, my mother Miriam. And so I grew up in quite a large family, a tribe. And all of my aunts and uncles and cousins, I have 104 first cousins. We would get together. We'd spend time on the river every year. And I seemed to always have like a child that I would be like having on my hip or helping to make food or doing song circles and dance with. It's just been part of my life, is that way of the tribe. And so I've always known that I was going to be a mama. I've got a Cancerian moon, that helps. But also, I just knew deep in my womb that I'd be a mother. And when I was about 14 years old, I was working in a local health food cafe. And I saw on the bulletin board an article about water birth and hypnobirth and natural birth. And I'll never forget being a 14-year-old girl completely covered in truth bumps, knowing that when my children came into this world, I was going to be choosing to bring them in this way. And I had an incredible partner. We were together for 7 years actually, and he was in a car accident. He passed on very suddenly. And so, if getting to see my whole life with someone in particular, thinking that I would have children with that man, and then very quickly that was gone, and I had a bit of bitterness inside of my heart. And yet I was given a really beautiful blessing and shown that there was another partner that I'd been with for eons. And when I met him, there'd be a light in him that I would recognize. And sure enough, when I met my beloved Joshua Wise, 15 years ago we were married, but we've been together for even longer. And he turned after we'd just met, and when he turned, there was this light that shone through him that was so bright, and I knew that it was him. And we welcomed in our first daughter when we were living in southern France. We met with a midwife there, and the midwife was beautiful, but I was learning how to speak French, and my husband, who was fluent in French, was helping to translate, and I just knew that I couldn't be translating at the time of giving birth in my home, and I needed to go back to the United States, where I'm from, to birth there. And I was really blessed. Actually, with all three of my babies, I never had any morning sickness. With Mirabelle, I did a yoga teacher training that was all focused on prenatal yoga. So I was practicing yoga, and it was a really beautiful opportunity for me to just dive into that, knowing that I'd always be a mama and prepare for my first home birth. We were at a little cabin in the woods up above Santa Cruz, and we had all of the I had lilies and roses and tea lights and my angel cards and just all of the most magical ambiance that you could imagine. And when I went into labor, I'd asked my midwife, well, how am I going to know when I go into labor? How will I know I'm in labor? And she said, you're going to know. And sure enough, I did know. And yet I had read so much, and I had learned that instead of really like letting the sound emerge and erupt in like a loud scream or a cry or even anguish, that I'd be losing the energy. And so from the very first pangs of labor, and as each of these waves, these surges started to come through, I had this really deep, low hum, and I was practicing the pranayama of covering my eyes and ears and just humming and going deep, and all of the sounds were really low. One of the funny moments was as I progressed, maybe like 15 hours into the labor, and I started to do some more breathing through, and I was saying shoo, 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 and breathing with my breath through the waves. And my husband Josh came very close, and he was saying shoo, shoo, breathing along with me, and I said no, shh. So we have an inside joke about that. But he was right there, just ready to support. He was the doula, and our midwife, who'd been practicing midwifery for 30 years, she actually didn't show up until like 5 minutes before our daughter Mirabelle came through, because Josh hadn't realized how far along I was. It was my first child. She was basically thinking, oh, okay, she's fine later. They'll let me know when it progresses. And yet I could start to feel Mirabelle's head coming through. And when I told Josh, please tell Yelena it's time, the baby's here. And Yelena told Josh, just tell Lindsey just not to push, just don't push. And Josh was on the phone and he told Yelena, you tell Lindsey not to push. Because he didn't want to tell me not to do whatever felt good. I had already told him, I've read what to do. If we need to just deliver the baby on our own, it's all right. And I had it in my head that the midwife might not make it. Thankfully, she made it. And when she checked, there was a bit of a lip. And when she helped to move that for me, my bag of waters broke in the water, and it felt quite a bit like a slingshot, and it popped through. And then in my next wave, Mirabelle came, and it was so beautiful to hold her on my heart. And what was funny was to have a midwife tell you not to push. And actually, I didn't ever feel like I needed to push. I knew that the midwife wasn't there and I didn't want to rush or hurry, but also it was this really beautiful depth of knowing that with every single contraction, with every single wave that was coming, I was just blossoming and opening. And I had beautiful roses on my altar, and I just watched these roses and was very much in with the rose being a midwife for me, and visualizing that blossoming and opening. So there wasn't ever any pushing or any strain. Also, for some reason, I didn't want the other musical track that I had thought I'd wanted. All I wanted was Burning Spear, Marcus Garvey, this reggae dub, and we had it on a cassette tape. So another joke is I'd say, flip the tape, and my husband would flip it. And it was just like the most perfect rhythm for me. And that's what we birthed to for many, many hours. And after Mirabelle was born and I held her to my heart, I handed her over to Josh when it was time for me to birth the placenta, and she peed all over him. She loves that story. And the placenta came out fully intact. And yet, after I migrated from the tub over onto my bed, I just started losing bowl after bowl after bowl of blood. And the midwife told me, please don't get up. I'm going to call the paramedics and you have to go in. This isn't normal. Your uterus isn't contracting. I'm going to check the placenta and see if there's a cotyledon or something stuck. So just stay here. And all I wanted was to go and be on the toilet, actually. And so I'm a little bit cheeky. I got up, and as soon as I stood, I just completely lost consciousness, and I was surrounded by multitudes and multitudes of light beings, and the light was like brighter than you could ever even imagine, and the sound vibration was so strong. And it was that every single light being that was at my level and below me and above me and all around me, this whole family that were all just beaming at me, these rainbow luminescent beings. Each one had their own sound vibration, like a different crystal bowl. And I was in heaven. And I mentioned that my fiance that had passed had left me a bit bitter about the aspect of death, and he was there in the center. And as I moved in toward him, he morphed into Jesus. And they say whatever your culture is, however you've been raised, that's who you'll see. It could have been Allah or Buddha. For me, it was Jesus. And as I saw Jesus with just like the most beaming, heart opening consciousness, I received a phenomenal transmission as I went in to hug. I was still going in to hug and receive Seth, and then it was Jesus. And as we hugged, all of the multitudes and we all became one. And then my husband said he's never seen anyone slap someone so hard repeatedly. I had the gift of my midwife being an incredible shaman, and she brought my soul back into my body. She really commanded me back in. And then I forgot to say that the first paramedic I had sent away, and I'd signed a consent that if I died, I wouldn't sue them, as you do. But I did not want to go to the hospital. And I said, no, 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 I'm fine. I'm going to be okay. And so when I came to, she told me the second paramedics is on the way. And this time you're getting in. And when I got in, I'll never forget just seeing my gorgeous new daughter and my husband, and just thinking like, okay, I'm going to see you in a minute. And all I wanted to do was to go back into that realm that I'd been in, that homecoming. And so I closed my eyes and I went back into that space, I thought, and yet instead I was taken this other dimension into feeling like I was a crystal in the depth of the water. And it was like samadhi, with no question, no answer, the nothingness, the womb of our mother. And I was in that space, and I felt like I was there for a very long time, being shown more insights than I've received from any of my earthly teachers. And I felt like I was there for eons, and I could have been there for much longer. But then I was resuscitated with electricity because I'd flatlined again, and they brought me back into my body. And they gave me 5 units of blood, and it took a little while to bring everything through. And a midwife with a very small hand helped to reach inside and get the second placenta. It was a twin, and we hadn't realized it because it was very, very early on that the twin hadn't made it. But that second twin's placenta was inside. Now, before she removed it, I was trying to decide if I'd share this, and it's an important part of the story because I was resuscitated and surrounded by a lot of humans. They cut off my underwear, and they were quite loud and aggressive and even angry at me, saying, "Why did you birth at home? Why weren't you in a hospital?" Really a traumatizing experience. And then a doctor had all of the others go except for one nurse, and he was reaching inside of me and saying, if you don't hold still and shut up, you're gonna die. And I got this like Kali Ma wave that came through, and I just roared. That like primordial roar is what my husband calls it. That's the first birth. When the baby came through, it opened up this roar, and I set that sound out, and my midwife found me, and she cleared that man out, and she stayed with me by my side. My husband came. The veil was opened, and as I nursed my daughter and as I received all of the blood, it was quite phenomenal to get to really witness that, all of the ancestors and all of the love that was coming inside of me with this blood. Didn't matter if the people had a certain religion, or if they were male or female, or what their sexual orientation was or preference, any of it. None of it mattered. It was all love. And that was my biggest takeaway from that experience, was the truth that all we are is love. And also with my Dharma being the soul song revival, and helping people who say, oh, I can't sing, I don't have a good voice. Part of my Dharma, my purpose, is awakening that so that we can all be part of that universal choir of life together. It was a really big journey for me, as you can imagine, and for my husband. And actually, a lot of people that had told me I shouldn't have a home birth, and had looked down on that, when they asked me, oh, how did your birth go? I totally fibbed, and I just said, it was beautiful. It was a beautiful birth, because it was. I didn't tell them about the aftermath. I'd only told a few beloveds. And the few that I had told were a bit concerned when I found out only 6 months later that I was pregnant. It's a myth that you can be breastfeeding and not get pregnant, even with being careful. Our second son, Jasper, he slipped right in, and we're so thankful for his presence. But I'll never forget, learning that I was pregnant, having the test and saying, but I already have a baby. And sure enough, I was meant to have, as some call it, Irish twins. And my children were only 15 months apart. And so for the second birth, when the people who knew what had happened in the first birth, including my mom, my in-laws, they told me, you've got to go to a hospital. After what happened, it's not safe for you. And I've really prayed about it. And in the depth of my womb, I knew that it was just fine to give birth at home again. And because I'd had such a traumatizing experience, I actually said, I'm never going into a hospital again unless I'm on a stretcher, and unconscious. It was that bad. And so I was so blessed that the same midwife was able to come, Yelena, and the same horse trough that Mirabelle was born in that she'd had for 30 years. And it was this big horse trough with pool noodles on the side. I mean, this was 14 years ago. So we also had names on the outside of the horse trough of every child that had been born inside of it. And my husband, took it out and he used the betadine and he was able to sanitize it with all the raccoons watching as my son Jasper came along. Now, with Mirabelle, because the midwife wasn't there and it was my first birth, I was in the water a lot. I was really using nature's epidural, and it was softening the contractions, and it helped me so much. And yet, with Jasper, my second child, I knew that I needed to use the power of the water to help to move everything along. I'd learned more about this from other mamas, and so I would rest in the birthing tub, and then I would get up and go get in the shower and let it spray on my lower back especially. And again, that primordial roar and just sending all of the energy down and out to move it through. And whereas my first labor was 18 hours, the second was only 11 hours. And what was really magical is that Jasper was born on 11/11 at 1:11, and he was born with the caul. And so that means that the amniotic sac, the entire sac, it didn't break. And so he was wrapped inside of the caul, and when we birthed him through, it was just the most surreal, magical birth. I held him, I birthed the placenta, my husband helped me, I stopped off at the shower, had a little rinse, still had him at my heart, went and was tucked into bed, I was nursing. It was after a bit of time actually that Josh said, may I hold him? And I said, of course. And yet I had just kept him right there on my heart. And our daughter Mirabelle was with her grandparents so that we got to sleep. The midwife made us some food to eat, tucked us in, and it felt like a dream come true. It was like, all right, I'd paid my dues. I had that birth. And then we had our beautiful children in Northern California until I'd gone for a Mother's Day gift to Big Sur. And in Big Sur, I went to a spirit songs, like a singing immersion at Big Sur in the water. And I prayed all the way from Big Sur back to Redwood City where we lived, asking, please, I need a sign, because this was, now our children were 2 and 3, and I knew that we weren't meant to live in Northern California. I knew that there was a deeper path for us, and I really prayed fervently for several hours. There was a beautiful spirit that was with me in the car as well, a spirit guide, and that was helping as a messenger to bring these prayers. And what was really special was the dream that I had that night. And I met my yoga angel fairy, her name's Simone, And when I met her, she showed me these rice paddies that were actually moving in the wind. And when we connected, everything froze. And I'll never forget just getting to witness her. And I told my husband, okay, I don't have the answer of where we're meant to move, but I was visited by a really beautiful angel, a guide, and she told me just to wait and that it'll be okay. So then 9 months later, that gestation period, we actually met Simone's partner, and we met him at a concert in the city, and he told us all about Ubud, Bali. And I had lived in Pai in Thailand long before, and so had he. And he said, if you love Pai, you're going to love Ubud for your children. Go and check it out. And he told me that his partner had a beautiful yoga school, the School of Sacred Arts. And when I went home that night and I looked on the website, I was just covered in truth bumps. My heart stopped for a moment as I gasped. And it was Simone, the woman from my dream. And so I went and I woke up Josh and I said, oh, I found it. You've got to quit your job. I know you're the principal of a school. I know you're double Taurus. This is going to be hard, but we're going to Ubud, Bali. And thankfully, he obliged. And we moved there when our children were only 2 and 3. And I had learned that Bumi Sahat was the birthing clinic there. My friend sent a link and I said, oh, I want to find it. I don't know how far it is from where we live, but I'll find out. And on my first morning walk, I went around the corner from our temporary home and there was Bumi Sahat. Now, Bumi Sahat is owned by Robin Lim. She's the founder of Bumi Sahat. And Bumi Sahat is gentle births from Mother Earth. And her mission has been helping countless Indonesian women that are birthing there. And she's also gone for disaster relief in the Philippines and different areas. And she was even voted CNN's Hero of the Year and gifted $250,000 to build a new center. But this was many years before that. And so I was helping to teach prenatal yoga and helping with with all of the child care that was there. And also once when I was there and supporting with some of the volunteer services, there was a mother who was in labor and Robin asked if I could offer the moksha for her, and she showed me some different techniques, and the Balinese woman would not let me let go of her hand even when it was time to birth. And that began my offerings for the Balinese and also for many of the beautiful the expat community that were there helping as a doula. And I witnessed so many miracles. I love it when the babies are crowning and coming into the world in active labor. They are surrounded in a circle and we all sing the Gayatri mantra. And the Gayatri mantra is one of the most ancient Sanskrit mantras to bring the darkness into the light. Bali has all of the black and white checkered flags and kind of sarongs around their banyan trees, and they really celebrate the darkness and the light rather than pushing away or exiling any. And so when the babies are coming through, we sing this mantra. Om Bor Bhuvasvahai Tatsavitur Varenyam Barko Devasya Dhimahi Dio Yona Prachodayat. We would hold hands or open our palms and offer our vibrations of love and welcome these babies through. Well, we had another child that wanted to come into our family for many years, and I'd had the taste of freedom. And so I'm not going to go into the whole story, but there was some incredible divine intervention that took place to help me to feel peaceful about bringing through our son Elijah. And he also was such a beautiful pregnancy. I was able to offer my teacher trainings on how to teach children yoga and song circles and kirtans all the way up until his due date. And speaking of due dates, I want to mention that all 3 of our water birth home babies, they were all born 2 weeks after the official due date. So I'm a really big advocate for just allowing the body to blossom and soften letting the lungs of the baby be fully developed before any type of intervention. That doesn't mean I wasn't doing acupuncture and a lot of malasana squats and foot rubs from my husband, feeling like I was ready to birth. But it was a deeper and deeper state of surrender. A couple of weeks before Elijah came, there were a couple of hundred dragonflies that came around us, this whole tribe of dragonflies. And it felt really magical to be in our community home with a lot of beloveds around that were really offering to support. And yet I actually didn't have anyone inside of the birthing space except for Josh and I. And then the midwives came in at the very last stage of labor. I asked them to come in during the active labor, and that was so that I could just have this vision quest and go really deep with the baby and not have any other distractions. One of the midwives I've worked with said that one of the things that is said is that for each additional person in the room with the mama who's birthing, it can take an extra hour. I don't know that that's statistically proven, but it's just a reminder that the more people are there, there's just much more that the mama is needing to move through energetically. And so I really just welcomed my husband in to be there for me and to support. And yet I went into this beautiful deep bubble. Now, with Elijah's birth, as I mentioned, there were hundreds of dragonflies, and it was a magical birth because I didn't even feel like the lower vibrations that I mentioned, like the primordial sounding and the oming that really came through in my first two births. They weren't there so much. It was just more pranayama and breathing. I was working with my medicine drum a lot as well throughout the time of conception and labor and delivery. Like, I really worked with the drum as well to move me out of my thoughts and to just come into a deeper space, into my intentions, into the vision, and just into the present moment. And what was really special about Elijah's birth is that when the midwife came in just before he was born, thankfully, she was able to hold the camera and get some epic shots. But also, I had my husband holding my head, and she held my feet for a little while as I progressed in the active labor. And I could hear so many wild women down at the river. And we'd had like wild women immersions there at the river before. And I said to my husband, wow, like they're really going for it today. You know, big cathartic releases, so much sound vibration coming from the river. And Josh looked at me and he said, I can't hear anything from the river. You know, they're not there today. And I was, again, covered with the truth bumps as Spirit showed me that these were my ancestors who had come before, those who are yet to come, all of the midwives and the birth keepers that were there, that were moving this through. And I got to be a surrogate for that. It was very powerful. And yet I had these celestial sound waves come, these song lines that were very, very clear and pure and quite high that were coming through. And Elijah and I, we labored for 12 hours. It was nice and gentle. I also had the roses for Jasper and Elijah's birth. I was smelling and present with the rose a lot during the labor and the delivery, and just really going into that deep space. When it was time to bring Elijah through and I'd been singing those songs, I had actually gone onto my knees for a moment, and then thankfully I flipped over and Leanne was able to take a video. And when Elijah comes through into the water, he opens up his arms really wide, and it was phenomenal because all of the cicadas, they all began shoo, 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 all the sound vibrations. And my husband Joshua was there singing the Gayatri mantra, of course. And the first thing that came through, and I needed to actually wait for another contraction. The only kind of painful moment was when Elijah was halfway out, and I tried to, I said to my husband, lift him up, because I thought that he would come through, but I actually needed to wait for another wave. And so my midwife said, I'm the first woman who has ever had a baby halfway out of her that asked her to make a video. But I said, make a video. And she said, it's on. And then with the next wave, I pick him up and place him on my heart. And I say, oh, Shapachicho. And then I had a bit of the deeper smooth through some of those lower vibrations. And Elijah begins to cry. And we acknowledge what a big journey we've had. And before he came through, it feels quite personal and yet really important to share that the aspect of the Divine Mother, of the Heavenly Mother, really showed me that he was passing through the veil into the care and into our care. And I felt that same heavenly family, the multitudes that I'd been with in my death experience, I could feel all of them there with me. And I could feel that they missed his presence while he's with us just as much as we miss our loved ones that move, and there's a real beauty in that and in being given a gift of helping to steward this precious being. And Elijah was a lotus birth. And so we actually did not remove his placenta until it came off 5 days later naturally. And Ibu Robin that I'd mentioned has a beautiful book called the Eighth Chakra. I think it's the Eighth Chakra, the Forgotten Placenta, it's about this placenta being this other chakra. And the Balinese also believe that the placenta is the twin, like the twin spirit. And whenever we would ask Elijah, "Are you ready? Can we bury the placenta?" he would start to cry. And so we waited. I ate the juicy bits of the placenta and we encapsulated part of it, and then we buried part as well. With the lotus birth, we put lots of fresh salt and lavender on it, and then we offered it into the frangipani tree. It was very beautiful. And I feel like my journey with motherhood as well hasn't been all perfect, perfect births. I want to share that we've felt another spirit that was meant to be part of our family. And Josh and I hadn't ever experienced miscarriage together, but we consciously welcomed in a child, and at about 8 weeks had a miscarriage during this pandemic. And then we tried again right after, and I had a miscarriage again, and that time there was a complication. And I actually had to go to the emergency room on Mother's Day, and I had a really traumatizing experience again. And so it brings up that mama bear aspect in me that wants to help to protect other mamas, so that they know that wherever you're birthing, it is completely your choice. And yet I learned the hard way the first time, because my midwife and Josh were coming after me in the ambulance in their cars, and it took them longer to park and get inside. And then the second time, my husband wasn't allowed in the hospital because of the pandemic. So I was wearing a mask and alone and had these experiences. So I just want to share from, my testimony, my personal experience, how important it is for you to have a beloved with you, have your partner or have a doula or midwife, someone that is appointed to be with you, just like in a ceremony from the beginning, the middle, all the way to the end. It's very important. Yeah. The ceremony of life is much like this birth, because we have to remember that there's the beginning, the middle, and the end. Sometimes we get stuck in the middle. One of the things that I'll share that I was shown in my near-death experience was that, lots of people go into like a hell matrix, a space of suffering and limitations, negative beliefs, and also a space of not being able to forgive and move through. And so what I really learned in my births was that it's an opportunity, whether you're birthing or you're a part of someone else's journey of birth, it's an opportunity to tune in with what you're holding on to and what you're ready to let go of, to forgive, so that you can make way for whatever new is birthing through you. I'm chosen to make this video for you on new moon because I know that you're birthing something in particular, and I want to honor whatever that might be as being very beautiful and sacred, and also something that no one else can birth. So whatever this birth story extravaganza has brought up for you, I also want to give you space to be able to share. Ibu Robin taught me the bone closing ritual, and that is post-birth, allowing the mama to just share the whole birth story without being interrupted, and then using sarongs to seal the space, offering a beautiful ritual to cleanse and purify, offering some sonic sound, and then sealing the space. And if you haven't had the opportunity to do that, I'd be honored to be a part of it, but also it's something that you can connect with other mamas and exchange and hold space for each other for this gift. So I'm going to offer some sage now, because that was a big story. Whoop, fell in the crystal bowl. That was big stories. I'm going to offer up some sage just as a purification for my heart and for yours. And I'm going to welcome you to just bring one hand onto your heart and one hand onto your womb, so that you can feel into the beat of your heart. You can feel into the rise and fall of the breath, the Shekinah. Go ahead and close your eyes. And I'll invite you to do as we did when we began. Take a moment to really feel the earth below you, keeping you grounded and safe, holding you. And feel the sky above you as you welcome in all of the support from the unseen realms, your mighty circle of protection. That's the nature spirits, animal spirits, midwives and doulas, ancestors, bodhisattvas, ascended masters, whatever it may be, beginning to welcome it all in. As you begin to just take some long, deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. As you inhale, bring the energy of the earth up and through your being, all the way up through the crown. And then as you exhale, bring the energy of the sky back down and through your being, through the roots. Inhale the earth back up and through you. Exhale slowly back down. And then bring your hands onto your heart for a moment, connecting in with your intention of what it is that you are birthing and bringing forth at this time. The intention beyond words, harnessing the energy of the new moon and welcoming you to visualize that intention. And then slide your hands down onto your womb, your hara, if you're in the masculine body, whatever you resonate with this sacred space being called. Bring your hands and just spread out your fingertips, keeping the eyes closed, and really feel into the sacral chakra here. This is where our passion and our creativity is birthing from. If you are already a mother and you've put some of your dreams and your passions on the shelf, I'm going to invite you to scoop them up and begin to look at them. If you are a birth worker who has chosen not to have children in this lifetime or have not been able to conceive and bring a child through, my heart is with you deeply, and I invite you to do the same, to feel into the intentions of what it is that you are birthing at this time in our new earth. Breathe deeply, focusing all of your breath now as you inhale into your womb through the nose and exhale out through the mouth. Inhaling and receiving fresh prana and exhaling to surrender. And if there are any limitations over what feels possible or accessible, I'm going to invite you to surrender everything up that has felt like a blockage to the circle of protection and support, to your team of your midwives, as we help you to birth this through, this vision. I'm going to offer my medicine drum. And just for 2 minutes, keep your eyes closed and continue to inhale in through the nose slowly and out through the nose. Consciously inhaling and bringing in the support, bringing in the fresh prana and chi exactly where you need it, and exhaling to consciously let go and surrender any of the limitations in the mind or anywhere in the being that is stopping you from these gifts being born and manifested at this time. As you're breathing, you may even visualize any type of blockages or obstacles as a different color of energy, maybe a pattern or a shape. And the gift is that you can ask this energy, are you ready to evolve, to transform, to grow? Usually this energy may be a bit wary, but is usually excited. And so consciously welcome this energy to evolve with you, with your breath and your intentions at this time. A song for the womb, for the circle, and I'll do this as a call and response so that you can please hear the call. I'll sing it first and then you'll respond it back. Sacred circle, no beginning, no end. Sacred circle, welcome friend. All of you is sacred. All of you is whole. All of you is welcome. This is our home. Sacred circle. No beginning, no end. Sacred circle. Welcome, friend. All of me is sacred. All of me is whole. All of me is welcome. This is our home. Sacred circle, no beginning, no end. Sacred circle, welcome friend. Begin to move your hands on the womb, on the hara, in a clockwise direction. Witnessing if there's new color or vibration in the sacred space. Really feeling into what it is that you're birthing. And we're going to offer this up into the light of the sun, Tatayenti. On the count of 3, we're going to exhale and we're going to send our palms in this energy that we've been working with into the sun. And then we're going to inhale deeply from the sun and bring it all right back in. So taking the hands, gathering up whatever needs to be surrendered into the sun, knowing that it comes back fully recharged. And on the count of 3, let's offer this up with our palms to the sky. 1, 2, 3. Exhale. Inhale deeply from the fingertips, from the soul. Hands back on the womb and breathe it in. Take a moment to really visualize and feel into what you're birthing in this moment, in this cycle, on this equinox, in this precious time of birthing in new earth. Take your hands together, create some chi, rub them quite quickly. And then we're going to put our hands back, a hand on the heart and a hand on the womb. Roll the shoulders back. We're going to seal the space by chanting 3 Ma's, followed by Shakti, Shakti, Shakti. So please exhale out all the breath, preparing for Ma. Inhale deeply. Shakti, Shakti, Shakti. Namaste. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of that birth journey. I wanted to share that I offer through my Facebook groups and Instagram the Global Sister Song Circle. We gather for collaboration ceremonies on the full moon, and the Global Song Circle for all genders on the new moon. And we come together in song and prayer, and I open the space and then I pass the singing stone. Actually, this is the singing stone that many of the mamas I've been a doula for have held, and I held in labor as well. So I pass this to you now because if you didn't get to be present for the opening ceremony where I shared the Soul Song Revival, it's recorded. So come and check it out. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'm here as a friend in this journey. And I wanted to also just give special, massive thanks to Sam, who I met in Australia many moons ago, who really saw me. And thank you, Sam, and the team for making this all possible. Blessings on everything that is coming into fruition from this. Also, if you check me out on YouTube, it is Lindsey Wise to see a 45-second snippet of that birth. And my mama bear got a bit activated because yesterday YouTube wrote and they said that the video didn't meet community guidelines and that they removed this video. And I wrote them, I appealed it, and I said, so many midwives and doulas use this video for educational purposes. So many women told me it was the first time their children had ever seen a real birth. And so they've put it back on there, and I'm really thankful for it. But also I just felt in the depth that there are a lot of powers that be that don't want women to know our full potential with birth, that don't want men to know their full potential, or women, whatever the partners are. And so it's so important for us to really come together at this time to be birthing in new earth, and to know that we're doing this as a collective, as a community, and that you have support, and that whatever it is that you are birthing is perfect and whole. And thank you. Sending so much love and well wishes. Namaste.